All right, so today we're going deep, really deep into some fascinating guidance on earning a living and honestly, just living ethically in general.
Yeah, sounds right up our alley.
It is. We're diving into a book called The Book of the Etiquette of Earning and Living, which is part of this much larger work called Ihya Ulumuddin by Imam Al-Ghazali.
Classic.
Yeah, it's this incredible resource combining Islamic teachings with a ton of really practical, ethical advice, stuff that's relevant for anyone trying to navigate uh, the world of work and commerce in a way that feels, well, good and right. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I mean, so much has changed over the centuries, but
Mhm.
the core principles, the underlying values, they really do seem timeless. It's amazing, actually.
It is. And that's what we're after in this deep dive. We're trying to pull out the nuggets of wisdom that still resonate today that we can apply to, I don't know, our daily grind, our side hustles, our investments, really any way we're engaging with the economy. So to kick things off, one thing that struck me is how much emphasis is placed on the virtue of earning a livelihood in this book. It's not just about survival.
I swear, like, it goes beyond just putting food on the table.
Yeah,
I mean, it
exactly.
draws heavily on the Quran and the Prophet's traditions to show that earning a lawful living, seeking sustenance in an ethical way, is actually seen as like a divine blessing.
Wow.
It's portrayed as a way to avoid becoming dependent on others, to provide for your family, and ultimately to support your own spiritual well-being.
It's all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting. The book talks about like three types of people. So there's those who are just completely consumed by worldly gain,
Mm.
to the point where their faith and their ethics suffer.
The workaholics, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Then you have those who are so focused on the afterlife that they completely neglect their worldly duties, their livelihood.
Ah, okay.
And then the ideal, right, it's this balance, a person who manages to earn a living, meet their needs, support their family, all while maintaining their spiritual focus.
Makes sense.
It even mentions Lukeman's wisdom.
Yukiman.
Yeah, the wise man Lukeman. He talked about how poverty can actually weaken a person's faith and intellect. It's like harder to focus on higher things when you're constantly struggling to just like survive.
I can see that. So basically, idleness and dependence, they're not viewed favorably.
Definitely not. And there are all these examples of the prophet's companions who were, actively engaged in trade and commerce, working hard, all while remaining like deeply devoted.
But how do you reconcile that, this focus on worldly earning with the idea that we should be focusing on our spiritual lives, on the afterlife?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the key insight here is intention. So earning a living isn't inherently bad. The problem arises when your why is off. Like, why are you earning? The book distinguishes between, seeking just enough to meet your needs, to be self-sufficient, to contribute to your family and community, versus this, like, relentless pursuit of excessive wealth for its own sake, for status, for power, whatever.
Right, for ego.
Exactly. So earning with the right intention, with a pure heart, to be self-sufficient and to give back, it can actually be an act of devotion.
That's beautiful. And it segues really nicely into the next part of the book, which gets into, well, the actual marketplace. What are the rules, the fundamental principles for fair trade, according to this text?
Oh, it gets really specific. And the first thing it stresses is knowledge.
Okay.
Like, anyone involved in trade, in buying or selling, needs to have a solid understanding of what's lawful and what's unlawful, both religiously and legally. And then it lays out all these conditions for contracts to be considered valid.
Makes sense. So, what kinds of conditions?
So it looks at, like, are the people involved competent to enter into this agreement? Are they of sound mind? Do they have the authority? Then it talks about the object of the contract. Is it something lawful? Is it beneficial? Is it something the seller actually owns? Can it be delivered? And is it clearly defined, to avoid any confusion or disputes later?
So many details.
And even like examples of what's prohibited,
Mhm.
like wine or pork, because they're considered haram.
Right, right.
And then permissible goods, like food, clothing, tools, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the agreement itself, the offer and acceptance, it has to be clear. No coercion or deception.
So, a verbal agreement is enough, or does it need to be written?
Well, that's interesting. The book talks about, like, sometimes a verbal agreement is sufficient, especially if it's backed by customary practice, what's usually done in that particular market or community. But written contracts are encouraged, especially for more complex transactions, to, like, really minimize the potential for misunderstandings.
And what about all those, slightly more complicated financial instruments?
Oh, yeah, like usury and forward sales and all
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
It goes into all of that. So the prohibition of usury, which is called riba, is a big one. It's seen as this really exploitative practice where you're essentially profiting unfairly from someone's need.
I see.
So specific rules are outlined for different types of transactions,
Right.
especially when it comes to money lending and even the exchange of certain types of food. Like, there are rules about exchanging wheat, for example.
Huh. Interesting.
And then it gets into things like salam, which is a type of forward sale where you pay in advance for something that will be delivered later. And there are all these conditions to ensure that the contract is valid, like specifying the exact quantity and quality of the goods and the time frame for delivery.
So important to prevent disputes.
Right. And then it even talks about different forms of partnerships. So there's Kirad, which is a profit-sharing arrangement where one person provides the capital and another manages the business.
I see.
And then there's Sharika, which is more like a traditional partnership where everyone contributes capital and shares in both profits and losses.
It's amazing how much detail there is. And it's not just about the technicalities, right? There's a huge emphasis on justice and avoiding any kind of, I don't know, unfairness, shady dealing in all transactions.
You hit the nail on the head. The text draws this really important distinction between, a transaction that might technically meet all the legal requirements, but still be ethically problematic. Like, for example, hoarding goods to artificially inflate prices.
Yeah.
That's a big no-no.
I can see why.
It's seen as this selfish act that harms the community, especially those who are most vulnerable.
Right.
And passing counterfeit currency, that's condemned in the strongest terms.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's seen as a grave offense that erodes trust and can have these really long-term negative consequences.
Undermining the whole system.
Exactly. And then there's this constant emphasis on honesty. Disclosing any flaws in the goods you're selling, being truthful about their quality and the price, being accurate with weights and measures, all that stuff.
Honesty, integrity, transparency.
It's all there.
Yeah.
And the book even has stories that illustrate these principles. And the Quran itself contains some pretty powerful warnings against things like manipulating scales or tampering with measurements. It's serious stuff.
It is, and it's so relevant even today. I mean, think about all the scandals we see, the corporate greed, the misleading advertising, all of it. So just being fair and honest, that's the baseline. But the book takes it even further, right? It talks about going above and beyond with what it calls acts of excellence in our dealings.
Right. It's not just about avoiding harm. It's about actively doing good.
Exactly.
So in Arabic, it's called ihsan.
Ihsan.
Yeah. And this involves things like, okay, let's say someone's struggling to repay a debt. Instead of being harsh, you could forgive part of it or give them an extension, cut them some slack. Exactly. And if you owe someone money, repay it promptly. Don't delay. And even, let's say someone buys something from you and then they change their mind. The book encourages you to accept the return, even if you're not legally obligated to. It's about prioritizing good relations over just, maximizing profit.
It's about being a mensch.
Yes. It's about being a good person, a decent human being. And it even extends to, if you know someone's in a tough spot financially, extend them credit with the intention of being lenient with them, not exploiting their vulnerability.
Such a powerful concept. So, I mean, we've covered a lot, but, for someone who's out there hustling every day, trying to make ends meet, build a business, all that, how do they reconcile all these worldly activities, all this commerce with their faith, with their spirituality?
Such a great question. And I think the book really boils it down to intention again. It emphasizes that your intention in business, why you're doing what you're doing, that matters profoundly.
Right.
And it should be in harmony with your spiritual duties, your obligations to God and to your fellow human beings.
So service to others, making a positive impact on the world, that can all be part of the intention.
Absolutely. Trade itself is seen as a way to fulfill the needs of the community. It's not just about personal gain. It's about contributing to the well-being of society as a whole.
That's a really nice way to look at it.
Yeah. It's not just, dog-eat-dog competition.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the book really hammers home this point. Your conduct in the marketplace, how you treat people, how you handle your business dealings, that's presented as the truest measure of your righteousness. It's not just about what you do in your private life. It's about how you behave in all aspects of your life, including your economic activities.
Really powerful stuff. So the big takeaway, I think, is that earning a living ethically, it's not just about following rules. It's about striving for justice, for fairness, for excellence in all our dealings, all while keeping our spiritual compass pointed in the right direction. It's about aligning our inner world with our outer actions.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I couldn't agree more.
So, for you listening, we'd love to know, what are your thoughts on this? How might these, I don't know, centuries-old principles inform the way you approach your work, your spending, your interactions in today's world? What does earning with excellence really look like in our modern context? It's definitely something worth pondering. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thanks, everyone.